Okay, so I'm going to show you how to go from this to this in this video. All right, and it's more steps than I anticipated, but you're going to be using these, and I'll give you a list of what spices those are. But I unwrapped it, and then you got to pull off this backing, and for some reason this one was really hard. I used a scissor, I tried to dig it up, I tried to separate it. It took me a little while, grabbing it with paper towel to yank it up, but eventually I did get it. It may have been because it was a bigger rack of ribs. I don't know. But it was a real challenge, but you pull it all the way up, and then after you're done doing that, you're ready to start seasoning. I put all my seasonings in a bottle like this. So all those that I showed you, everything in the recipe, I just throw them in an extra jar so I can shake it on there. And I begin with mustard because that's actually a binder. It's not as gross as it sounds because you don't taste it at all. You just squeeze that out on top of it and you rub it all in. And that creates a binder so the seasonings can stick to it and you do not taste it. I think it tenderizes it too, I don't know. But all I know is that it gets the shake to stick. All that goodness. So yeah, you massage it and you rub it in there. And then I have to clean off my hand. And then you shake on a little salt and pepper to taste. And I didn't over salt though. And salt and pepper. I laid that foundation. The salt and pepper is already in the regular spices, but I add just a little bit on that bottom layer. And now I go back and I shake this all over the top, and it actually looks excessive. I cover it so I don't see any more of the mustard. That's how I know I'm doing it the way that I want to do it and the way that it always turns out. I don't know if I'm doing it right, but you know what? They're edible and they're pretty decent. So I keep doing what I'm doing. Seeing as I'm not a meat person, it's crazy. You just shake that shit everywhere and cover up all the mustard. And when you're done, I basically pat it a little bit to make sure that it sticks. And then you turn that sucker over. And now this is the top of the ribs, because I always start at the bottom. So I can flip it over. And then I go through the same process, but patting it dry helps get rid of all the icky stuff on there. And all the moisture. And then I go back to the original steps, and I get that binder, mustard, and you squeeze that all over the place, and you do the same thing. So it's really not rocket science. Actually, my lovely son-in-law taught me that trick. You rub it all over the place so that it can stick on this side. I don't know if you're supposed to do the bottom of the ribs, but I do it anyway. I always double season. Not that it's really that necessary because it's not like that much meat is on it, but what the heck. And then I go back and I do my shake of a little salt and pepper. Bam, bam. Put that on there. And yeah. It looks the same as the other side because it is. A little bit more pepper. And I have to say, they did turn out pretty good. But I did hit a roadblock. You'll see that later on. And then back to my seasoning mix that I just created in that extra bottle. And I just shake that all over the place. Because I found that using my hand just doesn't work. If I just sprinkle it on there, it doesn't work the same. I don't get even coverage. So, yeah. And again, just try to cover all that mustard. No use in wasting the binder, because that's what it's there for. So, yeah. And then, all you have to do after you're done is let it rest for a little while. I don't know if that's really necessary because I already let it come to room temperature before I started. So I don't know that letting it rest really makes a difference between the seasoning and the actual cooking of it, but I'm told it does. So this is why I do it. Nice wibs, nice wibs. Yeah. Shake, shake. God forbid yellow is showing. Oh, more yellow. It's like coloring in the lines. You just got to make sure it's covered. All right, and now I just let it sit. I let that sit for about 45 minutes, maybe 40, before I threw it in the Instant Pot. So, yeah, you got time to do other stuff. With your Instant Pot, just make sure you're going to have each of these. That's apple cider vinegar, and you're going to pour about a half cup. Ignore the floating cork in my apple cider vinegar. It broke off my other cork I was using to close it. Anyway, half a cup of apple cider vinegar. I don't do an exact measurement. And then any barbecue sauce of your choice. This is what I happen to have in the fridge. It was like a honey barbecue. And just fill that up. So it's about a cup. I do add an extra like half cup of water after I add this though. And this just is at the bottom of the pot. The meat doesn't sit in it. It's sitting above this liquid. So the acidity of the apple cider vinegar will end up tenderizing the meat. So, and I've never not tried it with the barbecue sauce in there. I suppose you could just put extra water in there if you didn't want the barbecue sauce in there, but something about the smoky flavors, you know. So I just pour that in there. Make sure that you have your grate at the bottom of your Instapot so the meat's not sitting on the bottom. And I just stirred that stuff up because I didn't do a very good job mixing, because doing this with one hand is a little more challenging than I anticipated. So just mix that up. And again, I did add about a half cup of water to what I had already just put in there. And then you just mix that up, put the rack back in, and then you get to put the ribs in there. Holy cow. Watch this. Because these ribs are far bigger than I normally have, so they're kind of sticking up. I was kind of wondering if that was going to be a problem. Usually they come to about there. So we'll see. I kept my fingers crossed that it would seal properly too, and usually it doesn't touch the sides, so I was a little nervous about that. But then you go ahead and you put your timer on for 24 minutes at high pressure, and then you just turn it on. Just make sure that your top is closed completely and that seal is flipped to pressure. And then you let it do its work. And when it's done, you allow it to rest for about 5 minutes. And unfortunately, I skipped putting barbecue sauce all over it. I thought I videotaped it. I didn't. So this is what it looks like with the barbecue sauce all over it. Now keep in mind, it's already cooked, so I put it in the broiler on high after I slathered it with barbecue sauce. And then you shove it in there, and I don't know, you gotta watch it. Sometimes I put it on the upper shelf. This time I put it in the middle shelf, and I think it worked out okay, but you have to be careful not to overcook it at this point. So I think next time I'm gonna go back to the top shelf and just flash it as opposed to letting it sit there a little bit longer. I think it was in there for about 6 minutes, but it did its work. It was nice and bubbly, and it looked great. So, but it does continue cooking, you know, so you have to be careful not to dry them out too much. I've never really had a problem with super dry ribs out of the Instant Pot, and they do look delicious. And sometimes I have to hold up the tail end of the ribs towards the flame by hand, because if it's rounded, it heats the arch of the rib more than it does the end points that are lower. So, but it does look delicious, doesn't it? So, yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. And let me know how they turn out if you make them.